Hello and welcome back to another episode of Purpose Through Fitness, a community designed to encourage you to live a more positive, happy, and healthy lifestyle. We are going to uncover secrets of the body, the mind, and the spirit to help put you in the best position possible to live a more purposeful life. Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Purpose Through Fitness. I'm really excited to share this episode this week. This is something new, a little exercise that I've been working on personally that I wanted to share with you. And it's about dealing with a state of empathy, as well as looking to understand different sides of every story. You know, I've always been fascinated with stories about hearing from people go from the lowest of lows to the highest of highs. And in all these stories, you know, the person who goes from low to high is typically the hero of the story. And along their journey, they encounter a lot of people that, from the story we see, they're considered villains. But we really only know a fraction of their story. We really only understand a very tiny bit of that person's point of view or what they went through. So what I started doing is taking popular stories that we're all aware of, you know, things that we've had ingrained in our society for years and years. And I wanted to take one of the villains of the story and give a little more of a context and backstory. And the truth is, when I get done with these, you may still view the person as a villain, but there may be a better understanding of what that person may have gone through that caused them to be a villain in the first place. Now, this is not to excuse doing bad things to people or abusing people or anything like that. But if we can fully understand someone, instead of immediately throwing hate, anger, and resentment at them, we can take that state of empathy and have more of an understanding that they too are human. That they too are humans just like we are. And if our circumstances were the same as theirs, would we have turned out the same way as them? Would we have been better? Would we have been worse? No one seems to know, and I think it's important that we look at stories in such a way because we tend to vilify many people without knowing the full story. So I'm going to introduce you to what I kind of wrote. I wanted to write this again from the perspective of a villain, and I wanted to write almost a letter to the readers, to the person who knows the story and only knows the little piece of you, or only knows a little piece of the person and makes that quick judgment that they're evil, they're wrong, and just give a little more of a context to it. I'm sure about halfway through this, I don't give out any of the names because I want you to read along with the story, but I'm sure you're going to get the drift of what story it's from about halfway through, and then at the end when it's revealed. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and give you the following story. Dear reader, I was never quite as angry or resentful as I am today. You see, I grew up in poverty and always thought the world was against me, always favoring others, but never favoring me. That all changed so quickly, but as is life, it can throw us curveballs, and we react in such a way that it changes us multiple times, and it changes the way we act towards those that we love. This is my story. Once upon a time, I met a man with whom I grew quite fond. We laughed and cried, danced and sang, and soon I fell in love. But society would not allow the two of us to become one. You see, we came from different worlds, he and I. Him, the son of a king and queen, born into wealth, and me from rags and poverty. But our love was so deep that these differences had no bearing on our relationship, nor our connection. When I turned 25, he proposed to me despite his parents' resentment for me and my family. See, a wealthy family of royalty and a poor family did not mix very well in those days. Despite these differences, our marriage was about as perfect as it gets, and soon our love grew even deeper as several years later, we welcomed 2 beautiful daughters to the world. I was so happy that my daughters got the chance to grow up away from poverty, always had meals to eat, new clothes, and people to take care of them. After several years, I grew so accustomed to the new life and wealth with my husband and daughters that I became reliant on others to take care of me. I lost sight of taking care of myself and became less grateful for the smaller blessings in my life. After nearly 25 years of marriage, tragedy struck my life. My husband was out riding his horse when a man who was not paying attention pushed his cart in front of the horse. My husband tried his best to avoid the cart, but as the horse buckled, he was thrown off. He flew through the cart, and his head hit the ground before the rest of his body fell. The doctors tried their best to save him, but he died shortly after. My life was crushed. The man who gave me love and showed me what it meant to be happy, gone. I grieved over him, but was unable to properly mourn his loss, and soon this grief turned to anger and resentment. You see, although we had been married for so long, and had daughters together, his parents never liked me. They always viewed me as the poor girl, but they put up with me since their son loved me so much. There was never a moment where my parents and his parents met or even spoke. In fact, only 2 years prior to my husband dying, both of my parents succumbed to illness due to poor living conditions. Now, we had given them money, as my husband allowed me to do, but my husband's parents never let them step foot in their palace or on their property. Just 3 days after my husband's death, a messenger from the palace came and said, "The king and queen have decided you and your daughters are no longer welcome here. The sight of you and their grandchildren only bring them the painful memory of their son, who is no longer with us. You have 3 days to leave the premises. We will give you some money to survive, but after you leave, we never want to see you again." And just like that, what seemed like a break for a poor girl, a fairy tale life, turned into a nightmare instantly. My daughters and I packed up everything we had and moved far away from the castle. We took the money we had and did our best to find a new village and settle down. At this point, I was so full of rage, and as I said, I grew accustomed to the wealthy lifestyle that I turned into a cruel and punishing mother. I forced my daughters to wait on me hand and foot and do everything I said. In fact, if there was any backlash at all, I would punish them harshly and force them to do hard labor and lock themselves away from the world. I truly never wanted to be like this, but at this point in my life, my emotions took control of me, and I became the person I used to be thinking, the world does not shine on people like me. After some time, I pursued a relationship with another man who too had lost his first wife. We shared similar stories, but truth be told, I was never in love. I just saw someone who I could easily manipulate and take advantage of. He moved in with his daughter, and soon his daughter became the lightning rod for my wrath. She grew up in poverty as well, but always acted with kindness and respect. He always showed compassion and love to his daughter and mine, and I resented this. I noticed my daughter starting to love him and drift away from me. Because of the fear of losing my daughters, I started to treat them nicer, giving them nicer clothes and pampering them, and then used his daughter to do everything around the house. I thought to myself, she's not my daughter. She doesn't deserve a thing. Looking back on it, I really did see a lot of myself when I was a girl in her. And the fact that she was always kind, caring, and positive, for some reason made me resent her even more. That's not how I was. Why is she better? Tragedy had struck again when, after being briefly married, my second husband passed away. Although, if I can be brutally honest, his death did not hurt me like the first one did. And with how sick and twisted I became, I was actually quite happy. Now I would have full control over my house. My stepdaughter, well, she would get what's coming to her, and no one would experience love, kindness, or compassion. I thought to myself, I'll show her that being kind and positive isn't worth it when you are poor. So I unleashed hell. My daughters, taking after me, also abused their stepsister, forcing her to do all the stuff they didn't want to do, belittling her and making fun of her. As I write this and reflect, it really breaks my heart to know what I created in my daughters. But the past cannot be changed. The future, however, now that's a different story. At this point, we were nearly out of money, could barely eat, and what food we did have fed me, then my daughters, and then my stepdaughter. We received news that the local royal family was seeking a bride for their son, the prince, and they were throwing a ball for all guests to be welcomed. I thought to myself, maybe this is a chance for one of my daughters to wed into wealth, and then we would destroy this royal family from the inside. You see, I didn't really want what's best for my daughters at this time. I wanted to get back into wealth and destroy the royal family from the inside, even though this family would turn out to be drastically different from the one my first husband was a part of. The week of the ball, I took the money I had left, bought clothes, and had my stepdaughter help to make my two daughters as pretty and beautiful as they could be. I was determined for one of them to be chosen by the prince. I could see in my stepdaughter's eyes that she too wanted an opportunity, but my resentment for her grew, and I told her, no, you will never be worth anything. You are simply a maid, and you will never find happiness or wealth. After all these years, I still couldn't even show her the smallest sign of love. My daughters and I arrived at the ball, and we did our best to get the prince's attention, but to no avail. Soon after, a beautiful woman came in that took the entire place's breath away. I will never forget the feeling in the room, as if we had witnessed some kind of divine energy. Even those of the jealous type were taken aback by her beauty. I could see as soon as she locked eyes with the prince that he had made his choice. This woman was unknown by anyone attending the ball, and as soon as the clock struck midnight, she ran away, and no one, even the prince, could find her. Shortly after, we received news that the mysterious princess left one of her glass slippers at the ball, and the prince was going to have every woman in town try on the slipper to see who it belonged to. I thought maybe we'll get lucky, and one of my daughters would fit and no one would know. As the prince arrived, I had my stepdaughter locked away, as I didn't want the prince to see her raggedy clothes and dirty face, and I also feared that if the slipper did fit her, and she was chosen, then I would surely get what's coming to me. We each tried on the slipper with no success. Right as the prince was leaving, my stepdaughter walked downstairs. How did she get out? I thought. But the prince was determined to have every woman try on the slipper, so I could not object. She sat down, they put on the slipper, and it fit perfectly. This was all that was needed to know. She was the one. The prince called for her immediately and asked her to come to the palace. After she left, I was filled with anger, resentment, and bitterness. I took this out on my daughters. How could you let this happen? The prince and my stepdaughter were wed shortly after, and a messenger from the castle was sent to my house. A letter from your stepdaughter in the palace, my lady, he said. My first thought was, here we go again. We're going to be banished from the land. But this particular letter was something I didn't expect. Dear stepmother, I know how tough life has been on you and your daughters. You lost your first husband, were kicked out of a royal family, and left to fend for yourselves. This resentment grew, and although my father did love you, I know that your heart was still with your first husband. Truth is, I never hated you. You may be thinking that you treated me unfairly, but in fact you made me a much stronger woman because of the discipline you gave. I have never worked up the courage to say it, but I would like to call you mother going forward. And although my sisters may have mistreated me at times, you are the only family I have. I spoke with my new husband, and the king and queen. I told them of your story, and they would like to invite you and my sisters to move into the palace and start over with a fresh life. I hope this can be a first step for all of us to become one big, happy family and live out our lives together. I hope you decide to accept. With all the love in the world, your daughter, Cinderella. This was 10 years ago, and we accepted this invitation. The king and queen have treated us all with respect and love. Despite all the years of hardship and turmoil, I found happiness again. I found family again. And I found that feeling of true love again. I would like to say I regret some of the things I did, and to an extent I do, but I have learned that the past cannot be changed, and not to judge people based off of previous relationships or experiences. I hope my words connect with someone, and they look inward to realize that life is too short to hold grudges and be upset. Don't take the small things for granted and learn to love, even in times of tragedy. Many blessings to you all. Sincerely, the wicked stepmother. Thank you for letting me share this story with you, and I hope you took away a few different perspectives on this. One, taking away the perspective of empathy towards the stepmother and stepdaughters. Sure, the story of Cinderella as we know it points them to be evil and villains, but we only know so little about them. And although this story may be drastically different, maybe the stepmother and stepdaughters didn't go through the story that I laid out here, but maybe they did. Maybe it was even worse. You see, many times we tend to view someone based off of a few moments in time, without fully understanding who they are, where they've been, or what they've gone through. Taking a side of empathy can lead society to a much stronger place. Think about this. The next time somebody goes zooming past you while driving or cuts you off, instead of instinctually jumping to they're jerks, think that maybe they have an emergency. Maybe they're trying to get somewhere. Maybe they're on the way to go see someone that they're never going to see again. Something else I hope you take from this story as well is the perspective from Cinderella at the end. You see, the way I concluded this story here, Cinderella took the ultimate form of empathy. After everything she had been through, her mother dying, her father dying, being treated cruel by her stepmother and stepsisters, she could have easily convinced her new husband, the prince, to banish them from the land. But she took the side of empathy. She took that moment to take the higher road and say, you know what? I understand why you did everything you did, and I want to try and help to offer a better path. This is something else that we can take away from this story. If someone has mistreated you, forgive them. If someone has put you through trials and turmoil, put obstacles in your way, forgive them. Take that side of empathy. And maybe, just maybe, not only will they change, but so will you. If we can do this and we can try to understand people a little bit more, I guarantee society itself will be much better. I thank you all from the bottom of my heart for listening to this episode today, and although I normally leave on a particular verse within the Bible, I'm going to actually leave with just a small piece of advice. If Jesus wasn't sent here to condemn the world, then neither should you. Do a better job of showing love rather than hating sin. Be accepting and kind and caring versus judgmental. Many blessings to you all on the week ahead, and I wish you all the success in the world.